Hi, I'm your host, Praveen Ravisankar, and this is the Data Standard Audio Experience. We have an incredibly exciting guest today. On our podcast, we have Dave Cook, who's currently the Chief Technologist and Senior AI and Data Solutions Architect for Booz Allen Hamilton. Today, we are speaking about the use of data in growing companies from the perspective of an experienced professional within the industry. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Praveen. It's really great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show today. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. So my name's Dave Cook. As Praveen told you, I am a chief technologist and a senior AI and data solutions architect at Booz Allen Hamilton. Really what I am, though, I think at heart are both a data entrepreneur and a solutions architect. And what a data entrepreneur really is someone who works to work with others to help uncover truth and meaning in data, in their data, in data outside their organization, and really helps them make the most of the data that they have, really helps them get close to their data as close as possible. Being a data entrepreneur has really been across the arc of my career, and I kind of think of my career journey as a matter of looking at the intersection of data and technology and process, and the ways in which we can take the data assets that we have within an organization, marry it up with certain IT capabilities, apply tradecraft and workflows in order to really just exponentially get value out of the data that we collect every day. It's something that I think I really enjoy about the work that I do, particularly in my work now, where I really have such a, I think, incredible job and an incredible opportunity. I work with the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center at the Department of Defense and serve a lot of different customers there across all of the military services, across the intelligence community, really helping them accelerate the applications of AI and particularly human-machine teaming to the mission space. And that plays into, I think, my second thing that I've highlighted there, which is being a solutions architect, because probably the thing I think that I enjoy the most are very kind of fuzzy real world problems that are pretty squishy. It's kind of the heart of being a data scientist is all about, and turning them into information and intelligence and knowledge, something that somebody can really take action with, kind of an actionable product. It's just, to me, it's probably one of the most rewarding aspects of what I do right now.
Oh yeah, that sounds great, and I'm really excited to hear your perspective, especially with so many experiences.
Yeah.
But I do want to start off a little lighter, and
Sure.
I just want to ask you how the transition to remote and hybrid work has been for you, especially as someone in a managerial role. How has been like communicating with your data team members, and how do you keep, a strong data culture going within your company?
Sure. It's a really good question. I think all of us, when we made the switch to remote work, really when the world, I think, in many respects, made the switch to remote work, didn't quite know exactly what we were getting into. But for me, because I had actually been working remotely for some time prior to coming to Booz Allen, I had worked for another company that was based in San Francisco. So I was on the ground here oftentimes, initially by myself. And you learn a lot of good lessons that way. And the transition has not been as difficult, because I think that what I've learned and what I feel is really important in working in the data field, in the data science field, is the importance of communication and sometimes over communication. The importance, I think, of really taking a very agile teams kind of approach to organizing yourself. So less about hierarchy and who's doing who has kind of the leadership role, and more about how you coach everybody along. And that's probably the way in which I think COVID has really changed how I've worked with and managed people. It's something that I adopted, really as I think a philosophy when I was at Figure Eight, and even prior to that, Figure Eight being the company that I worked at prior. But it's important, I think, when you are working in the data science field, and there's so many different components to being effective, whether you're focused on data or you're focused on models or you're focused on implementation or you're you're doing the DevOps piece, or you're doing, the actual model testing and evaluation. Everybody really kind of has to coach one another. You're all part of a team. And so, everybody has to really make sure that they keep others informed, because of, it's a good way in which you can both keep people informed, and it makes, I think, the ability to keep other people accountable, also much more flexible and easier to do. It I think has made the transition to working during COVID a lot easier than I had anticipated. The one thing, though, that I will say where there have been some challenges has been, at the same time, while I think we've been able to be very effective in harnessing the different components of the data science pipeline, and us being able to communicate about it. What has been a challenge is sometimes just the human interaction, the conversations, and I think the organic growth of ideas that happen by interacting with somebody in an office. That has been more challenging than I thought, and I've really felt like the best way in which I've been able to address that is not to make actually every conversation with somebody about the particular thing that we're working on. Checking in with people, sometimes just scheduling time with people in order to talk about a particular idea that I have, to shoot the breeze, so to speak, about, I've been thinking about this, or I read this article, or I'm communicating with somebody about, I found this really great book that I think would be, pretty applicable here. I think it's the way in which you can kind of humanize and manage teams more effectively. But what that all boils down to, I really feel like, is, you have to be, and think in these times, more of a coach for your teammates. I think if you are the leader, then you have to over communicate, really make sure that everybody knows what's happening. We have to really, I think, treat each other and have people be cognizant of the fact that it's a stressful time for everyone. So that working in a data culture, I think, you have to, kind of take evidence from the data.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think over communicating as a manager is a really good way to put it. Especially I feel like people miss out on those 2-minute conversations that you have when you're passing by that really help build your relationship, or help bounce ideas off of each other.
Yep.
But I wanted to kind of move on to something a little more technical. And as someone who's been working within the field of analytics and artificial intelligence for years longer than most, how have you seen the industry change, and what surprised you the most until now?
It's a really good question. I think that the thing that I've seen really change, that has really amazed me, is I think it would be easy to say that it is the degree to which tools have become available, or how cloud has really taken over things. But I think I look at it in much more fundamental ways. Data is the fuel of most of the kind of analytics that we deal with. It's definitely the fuel of AI and machine learning, which is where I spend a lot of my time. And the degree to which data has really become such an asset. I don't like to use the term where people say it's the new oil, or it's the new bacon, or whatever. It's not really that. I mean, it's just much more of how we both understand and value data, and look at it as an asset of how we're going to be able to exploit it. So I think that's certainly one of the trends that I've been so surprised by. And I look back at it to, even early in my career, back when I was in grad school, and I started my career really in law enforcement and public safety, harnessing data as an asset for predictive kinds of work, prescriptive kinds of work, kind of understanding where crime was and where it was moving to, what are the dynamics between it, between different incidents. And, at that time, data was a lot more difficult to come by. We only had a couple of sources. Now, you don't even have to, necessarily be working for a law enforcement agency to really have a pretty decent understanding through open data and web services about what people are working with. It doesn't mean you have the full scope of understanding, but you can really learn a lot. I think about how back at that time where, you had to send away for data sets or identify a data set, and you just don't run into that anymore. So there's so much opportunity to have good, rich data. Also an opportunity to understand that data can be, cleaning data can be 80% of the work. But seeing data become an asset, seeing it take on kind of its own value, seeing it become multidimensional, where it's not just about one specific data type, but it could be audio, video, and imagery and text. It can be the temporal components that come with data. That's really where I think things have changed so much. The other thing I think that has really changed, though, is kind of what I call the democratization of tools. And by the democratization, I really mean that where it used to be that you had to essentially kind of conform your understanding of your analysis to the tools, and essentially, somebody was taking an abstract view of your problem, giving you a set of tools, and you kind of had to use, or make their tools work for you. Now you have so much more opportunity with data science tools that are readily available through Python, through R, through Julia, which is a phenomenal language that I've been working with more recently. Your ability to just get up and running and going and be able to access data is just so much more compelling and transform it into something. The last thing I'm actually going to add on one piece there that I've seen really change as well is what I love about data science, probably more than anything, is that data science can be a career. It can be something that, whether you're working on engineering or you're working on model building or you're working from statistics or what have you, it is a career that is really accessible to pretty much anyone. Myself, I have a bachelor's in history and political science. I took a turn towards the quantitative side of things, mainly because I wanted to really work in the applied world, and I wanted to take the power of context that I saw in data science, particularly working in geospatial and link and social network analysis, and apply that to the kind of problems that I was seeing in the world. And so, plenty of people I know, one of my best friends also, he has a background in both trauma and computer science. So you can really be a data scientist if you're just willing to go out and kind of work at it a bit. It's really something where I just encourage everybody to bring your best creativity, your best understanding of data, and really start to dig into problems, because you will find it can be incredibly rewarding.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess that's kind of a good segue into what I wanted to talk about next. As someone in a managerial role and as someone who's like been a part of the team, I'm pretty sure that, like just having one data scientist is probably not enough to like run a successful data science team. A lot of people that are like trying to break into the field are like, oh, I need to be a data scientist. I need to be a data scientist, right? But what are some parts of the data science team that are often overlooked and you think are super important for company success?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I think that there are a few different kinds of components to really bringing together a successful data science team. One of them I think that's really important is context is key. And so, for lack of a better term, you need someone that is a data interpreter and a data acquisition specialist, somebody who really knows how to go out and obtain the data, or can take a rough set of parameters to kind of find potentially relevant data sets that you can then evaluate. That is something that is really, really important. And oftentimes it's somebody who has a bit of subject matter expertise, but it can also just be somebody that's really creative and is good at digging. It's a great way in which to kind of understand data science capabilities. So I really recommend that. Another key component is data engineering. I think the metric is roughly that for every one data scientist, you need about 3 data engineers. Data and cleaning data and making it relevant and useful and putting it into data pipelines can crush your project. It is really something that's important to have a good data engineer, preferably 2. The data scientist, I think you can either specialize or you can be a generalist. I really think that some people, just want to be good at particular kinds of methods. Some people want to have domain expertise and they want to work in particular kinds of domains. Like I've worked mostly in defense and intelligence and public safety and emergency management. So I kind of specialize in those, but you may just be somebody who's specializes in computer vision, or somebody who specializes in natural language processing. It really is just up to you, but specialization or generalization, I think, is always important. Particularly if you just have a passion or a love for things. The next piece that I would add is somebody that's good with data storage, somebody that's good with cloud and working in hybrid environments. That's always important. There are great AWS and Azure and GCP, Google Cloud Platform certifications that you can get that help you there. Visualization, so visual analytics are really critical. Sometimes people don't give enough credit to them, and I think that that's really unfortunate and a mistake, because visualization can help save you a lot of time, particularly just telling you where you may be accurate, or you may and maybe going in the right direction, or you may be really heading down the wrong road. The last thing that I would include is just people who have subject matter expertise. If you really understand particular kinds of problems, for a particular customer, or you are somebody who is a project manager or program manager for a data science team, and or a builder of data products, that's really, really critical. I'm going to add another piece here, though, that I think is important for AI and machine learning, because those are their own individual kinds of pipelines. I can't stress enough how important I think it is for data scientists to be familiar with machine learning, because it is the wave of the future. Human machine teaming is going to reshape how we govern, the kind of services we demand of government, from the commercial sector, from technology. It is going to reshape our lives. And so I think it's really important that people who work in data science understand that and are really able to have the skills that are necessary. And so a couple of things that I would add there in particular are someone who is very good with data annotation. How do I essentially take data that is going to fuel supervised machine learning models? And how do I make sure that that data is framed accurately, and that, I've tested and evaluated that model, or tested and evaluated that data for good quality effectively, because bad data is worse than no data. It can really crush you. And data errors are incredibly expensive to fix, often more expensive to fix than the systems on which they're running. So you get bad data, you get bad data annotations, you're working with synthetic data, and you've created some errors that propagate exponentially. You are going to really be in a world of hurt, and you're probably going to have to start over. So understanding that element of the pipeline, and then how you can optimize data sets and make models more performant through testing and evaluation and deployment and retraining of those models. Understanding different components of that pipeline are all critical to data science. So you've got so many different positions that you can work in. And if nothing else, I would just tell you, as a data scientist, if you're trying to just go into an organization and you've never been there before, if this is the place that you want to work, there's nothing wrong with just, sending out a resume to somebody and creating your own position. Almost all the positions I've ever had, I've been the first in that role. A lot of them have been created for me. I'm very fortunate that way. And I really think that the best thing you can do, the most rewarding career you're going to have, is just, create the jobs that you want, not the jobs that somebody's been, just willing to give you.
That makes a lot of sense. And I guess you kind of touched on this in your last answer, and it's like a good segue into the next one. But what should emerging professionals really focus on, like either students or people that are trying to switch into data science, to keep ahead of the curve and maintain longevity? I know you're pretty passionate about maintaining longevity, so I'd love to hear what you have about this.
Sure. I think the things that people really can focus on, and where you stay ahead of the curve, there are a couple of kind of key areas. Understanding data pipelining and use case onboarding within AI is really critical, because how you define how a problem is going to be solved within AI, I think it is incredibly important, or how it's going to be solved, with some element of analytics or data science. There are three questions that I tell everyone. And I think this is important about, when you're thinking about the kind of jobs how you stay ahead of the curve. Three questions that I always tell people to ask when it comes to, framing out an AI or in a data science use case is, tell me about your data. Tell me about what it is that you're trying to do. And that can be your taxonomy or your ontology or whatever. And then tell me what success looks like. I think that when it comes to your career, you need to particularly think about what that, to stay ahead in data science, how you're going to answer that last question when it comes to working with an organization. What do you think success is going to look like for this organization? And go and, have a very kind of set goal, particularly with that. Data science, though, the other things that I would encourage people to do to stay ahead of the curve are, if you're not, become, first, get involved in meetups and get involved with groups. I'm a part of Data Science DC. I have, spoken at their events. I've spoken at Women in Data Science events. Yes, I'm a man. I was the only, man there, but I remember calling them and checking to ask, like, because I got invited. I was like, are you guys sure? Because just so we're clear.
Yeah.
And it was great. I actually ended up hiring somebody from, after that meetup. So I would tell you that getting involved like that is really key. Become a big reader. There are plenty of really good books out there now. There weren't a lot, maybe 5-10 years ago. But those are really kind of important things that you want to stay ahead of. And in particular, I think the last thing is, do not forget the soft skills that come with being a data scientist. And that includes things like learn how to write well, learn how to write proposals well. There are some great materials out there. I am happy to provide them to anybody. And I really kind of focus in with people on anybody that I work with. Like, look, writing well is just a part of this job. You do not just want to be the person that that just builds models or just, works statistics. Your ideas communicated effectively can change the world. And if you know how to write well, that's certainly part of it. The other part of that writing well, though, is learn how to speak well. And then, that because, being able to present and cogently articulate your ideas is going to be key. And then just learn how to ask good questions. Those soft skills will take you a lot farther than you would think.
Oh, okay. Well, we here at the Data Standard are building a community of data enthusiasts and data thought leaders, just like you mentioned. Everyone is open for collaboration and to connect with one another. What can our community do for you, and what do you want to gain out of it?
That's a really good question. I think that what the community at the Data Standard could really do for me is, one, I think help get out the message about how important and how critical data really is, and kind of start the dialogue around how we value data as an asset, how organizations value data as an asset, how we treat it as an asset, and how we, for lack of a better term, really, evaluate data net worth, whether it's our own data net worth or whether it's that of our organization or the problem that we're working on. What are the data, strengths that we have, and what are the gaps that exist there? I think the other thing that is really important is how it's really how is that data being used, and I'll phrase it, I think, in a better way by saying that just like I've said before, that human machine teaming and AI is really going to change, I think, the way in which data science is being viewed. And it's going to really, I think, bring attention to a lot of the work that you're doing. But in order for us to have effective human machine teaming, the data behind that really, I think, has to be imbued with very human values. And those are things like accountability and integrity and trust, and the ability to really look at it in kind of a very broad, but also multidimensional way. And if we are looking at data not just as a technical problem, but as something that is much more a methodological problem, data, it's something that has real guiding principles. It has a very human face to it. I think that that's so important, because you cannot conflate data and technology. They are distinct and they are different. And the more we can get that message out about, these are these are very human-driven issues, I think the better off we're going to be.
Wow, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I guess people get kind of detached from like the human aspect of it when they're just looking at like a bunch of databases.
100%. Yeah, it's like spreadsheets and things like that, but that's not what it is. It is much broader than that. I mean, it's what our world is composed of in many ways.
Well, I really enjoyed having you on the show today, and thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciated your time. Where can our community find you online?
Sure. So you can find me online at LinkedIn. That's probably one of the best places. If you'd like to reach out and connect with me, I'd be happy to do so. And I'm not listed as David Cook. I'm just Dave. And certainly you can find me out there. I'm based in Washington, D.C. So that, I would recommend that's probably the best way. If people want to reach out, for connecting more directly over email, I'm happy to provide that as well. My email, it's very straightforward. It's just Dave and this is a company that I started, Datasolvent, DATASOLVENT.com.
Yeah, well, great. And for more information on the data standard, you can find us at www.datastandard.io. Once again, thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.